Awesome. Thank you. I love coming here and listening to her sing and listen to her sing. Well, it's great to be here this morning, and I hope you feel the same way. It's wonderful to see some old friends and meet some new ones, hopefully. I love levity. I love laughter. I heard a story recently just had me rolling in before. I told it to Debbie, and I got to laughing so hard that I just couldn't get through the whole thing. It took me about 10 minutes to tell this short little story. But it seems that these two elderly couples were having dinner one night together. And so after the meal, I guess you could say kind of traditionally for some people, the two ladies go off to the kitchen, the two guys go to the den and start talking. So in their conversation, they've been talking for a few minutes, and one of the guys looked at the other one and he says, "You know, we had dinner at this new restaurant the other night, and it was fabulous. One of the best meals I've ever had." And so the second guy says, "Well, where was that restaurant? Where's that restaurant located?" And the guy thought about it for a moment, and he thought some more, and he had this puzzled look on his face. And he said, do you know that flower that you give people when you love them, and you give it to them on special occasions, and it's red and it has thorns on it?" And the other guy says, "Oh, you mean a rose?" He said, "Yeah, that's it, a rose." "Hey, Rose, what was the name of that restaurant we ate in last night?" Now I got to tell you, folks, that story is a little too close to home for me. You wouldn't believe some of the conversations Debbie and I have some evenings. Oh yeah, but life is still fun. It's still fun, and I hope it is for you. So, the universal urge for good. That's the title I've chosen for my talks and thoughts that I want to present to you this morning. That phrase, the universal urge for good, is centered around the question of what is God's will for me? What is God's will for you? I don't know if you give that much thought, but I often seem to be drawn to that, and in different situations to evaluate what is God's will for me in this situation. You ever think like that? I bet if I went around and asked everyone here, you could answer that question one way or the other. You would be able to answer it and come up with some thoughts of your own about that. In addition, for one of the things that I have known for a long, long time is that one of the most powerful teachings that we have in unity is about personal responsibility. Now, a lot of people don't like to hear that. They don't like to think about it or think about having to take personal responsibility. But I think it's one of the most important concepts that we teach, and we do a great job of getting that across to people in many different ways in unity. Personal responsibility for one's life and personal responsibility for one's relationship to God. Lots of religions, teachings, lots of people will be happy to tell you what you should believe and how. I don't know if you've ever run into anyone like that, but I have run into several of them in my life. Well, Unity provides teachings that support one's journey to know the will of God in their life. And I think that's basically what we're about most often than anything else. And we have many different ways that we do that, many different teachings and principles that kind of lay out for you some thought, some direction, and then from that point, it's your responsibility to either use it, not use it, go your own way, whatever it happens to be. Because we never tell, I should never use that word never. I've learned that over the years. Most often we don't tell another person how to live their life or what their relationship to God should be. I've often said in the past that if someone walks up to me and says, well, I've got the right way, and here's what you need to do to gain God's favor, or to get into the kingdom of heaven, or to whatever else they happen to say. And that's when I usually put my hand on my wallet, turn around, and walk away, because I just don't need to hear that. I don't think I can tell you what God's will for you is about and what it should be. So we provide those kinds of teachings that support one's path. About a year ago, maybe longer, I began a process of thinking about another concept that intellectually I understand pretty well, but sometimes I have trouble holding on to the knowing about that understanding. You know, we can intellectually understand a lot of things, and when I mention this one, you're going to understand it. Basically, it's the spiritual concept of oneness. You understand oneness intellectually, but how about from your gut? Do you really feel the oneness with all creation, the oneness with other people, the oneness with yourself? Most often, you know, we're in conflict with ourselves. Internally, what we believe and know is not the same as we express on the outside sometimes. The saint, well, he wasn't a saint at the time, but Paul in the Bible speaks often to those words, and I'm not going to cover that this morning because it gets into a whole 2 or 3 sermons if we did that. But the spiritual concept of oneness, how do I know oneness? Sometimes our answers come to us in simple ways, in ways that are kind of, we don't really anticipate. Unexpectedly, an answer will show up in our lives in some practical experience. I want to share one with you that popped up about oneness for me this year. Debbie and I were traveling. We were in Southeast Asia, and we'd been through all those, there's about 4 countries there that a lot of people go to: Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam. We were in Vietnam. And one day we get on a bus and ride about 2 hours out of Saigon, now called Ho Chi Minh City, but the people there still call it Saigon. So we're a couple of hours out, and we go to this place that is called I don't pronounce it properly, but it's Chuchen Tunnels. These are the tunnels where they're set up as a kind of a visitor's place where you can go and see what the Viet Cong, how they operated underground for so many years. And these tunnels extend miles and miles up what they call the Ho Chi Minh City, or Ho Chi Minh Trail, which runs along the Mekong River, slightly away from that. So anyway, if anyone who was in Vietnam or was born about that time or before, you'll know what I'm talking about. And if you weren't, it's not really important, except what it is important in history, not so important today because we don't have that problem. But anyway, Debbie and I were visiting there. We went up to these tunnels, and first thing we did was go to this pavilion out in the woods. It has a thatched hut over it, and we met with a gentleman whose picture will be up here in just a moment, the big picture, the group picture. You'll see him standing in to the left, to my right, to the left of me from here. I don't know his name. He was introduced, but I wouldn't be able to repeat it anyway. But he was a high-ranking military guy with the Viet Cong. He lived in the tunnels for over 3 years, and he's now 83 years old. And so he took us, we were in this pavilion, and he did a lecture over how the Viet Cong used the tunnels, what they did, and all kinds of things about those tunnels. The lecture was about 45 minutes long, and he had an interpreter because he doesn't speak English. But what he told us was that he was injured, badly injured in the war from some kind of mortar, or what we today call an IED. But his right arm, he lost his right arm. He lost one eye. That's why he's wearing shades. And then he had a whole bunch of internal injuries and almost died from that. But he survived it all. And so he gave this lecture to us explaining all this stuff. So after the lecture, our guide said, hey, let's go outside. We want to take a picture, and anyone who would like to have your picture made with this man, just go right up to him. It'll be okay, and he's quite willing to do that. So I had that done. I don't have that particular picture today. But anyway, after that, then we had this group picture made, and we're standing in the group, and I'm just standing there waiting. Everybody's kind of milling around. They're finally getting everybody lined up, and just before everybody gets lined up, I look down, and this man has his hand out like this towards me. And I look at it, and in that one brief moment, probably 2 or 3 seconds, about 1,000 thoughts went through my mind. What is he doing? What does he want? He's got his hand out. What does that mean? And he just held it there. He didn't move it. Nothing threatening about it, just was there. And then I had all these thoughts crowding into my mind. I said, oh, it finally dawned on me. He's just reaching out to me. And so I reached out and grabbed his hand. And he had a vice grip in that hand. He knew how to do that. He's about 5'9", but he is one solid guy, 83 years old. So I'm standing there holding his hand, and I thought, how odd. And then all these thoughts, everything just kept going at lightning speed through my mind, and feelings that came up within me. And I thought, you know what, this guy, he's just reaching out with a hand. He's just telling me that it's okay today. Yeah, we were enemies years ago, but today, it's okay. The past is the past. Today is today. And I can't tell you how overwhelming that was for me in the moment. Even now, when I stop and tell you about it, I feel that same feeling coming up inside. How meaningful that was to me personally. He will never know what that incident meant. But for me, it meant the oneness of all of us. He couldn't speak my language, I couldn't speak his, but we had this language, reaching out to each other, saying it's okay. Now, to me, that was my experience of oneness that I had at that moment. I've had others, but none so compelling, none so deeply felt by me. I was just, to use a phrase, I was just kind of blown away in the moment with what was happening. And that hasn't left me. It has been with me ever since. As a matter of fact, I've kind of appropriated that sense and feeling of that moment, so that when I'm talking to just about anyone now that I have any thoughts about, any judgments about, any feelings of that person's not okay, anything like that, that feeling comes up. And I realize we're all just one. We all just want the same for each other. That man, that Army officer, now retired, he didn't want anything in this world but peace for his family. He just wanted peace for himself, for his family. He wanted some kind of meaningful work to do, a way to live his life, provide for his children, provide for his family. And that's what all of us want. Maybe we don't want a family, but it still applies. Whatever it is you want in life, that's what we want. To feel the fulfillment of living life fully, of living life in an expressive way at the highest and best. And that, to me, is the universal urge for good. Centered around the question of what is God's will for you, but then there's more to it than that. I want to share with you a reading from I have to look at her name. I don't recall it. I had it memorized. Minnie Louise Haskins. She was a British poet who lived from about 1875 to 1957. And she wrote a poem that she is still known for today. People still reference it often when they need inspiration. It's called God Knows. And I said to the man who stood at the gate, "Give me a light that I may trod safely into the unknown." And he replied, "Go out into the darkness and put your hand in the hand of God. That shall be to you better than light and safer than a known way." And so I went forth, and finding the hand of God, trod gladly into the night. And God led me towards the hills and the breaking of day in the lone east. And there's a whole thing that goes after that. But these words right here is called the gate. The gate to through the unknown into the greater being of who we are. The universal urge for goodness is we want to live the highest and best that we are. And sometimes it's difficult, isn't it, to step out to do that which we know would be for our highest good and for our best? Isn't that difficult? Isn't it a little scary at times to take that step? Isn't it scary to reach out and take the hand? Just a little bit. And yet when we do, we step through the gate, maybe to a magnificent new experience, a magnificent new beginning for ourselves. Give me a light that I may tread softly into the unknown. Wouldn't it be nice to have one of those all the time? That we had the light, we had the assurance, the faith, the knowing that as we step into the unknown, it's all okay. We can do that. Our son, another little experience that happened this week. Our son called us about 3 weeks ago now, one day, and said, "Hey, guess what? I'm moving to Orlando." And now you don't know this, some of you, but our son lived in LA for the last 20 years. And so we travel out there back and forth 3 times a year or so, but it's not the same. And we got 2 grandchildren. Debbie and I have set an intention some time back. We meet with a spiritual group about every 2 weeks, and we set intentions. We talk about spiritual matters. It's a bunch of ministers, and so we like to just talk at depth about things. And so we've been holding, Debbie and I, in our spiritual group, been holding an intention that we will live close to our children. Just totally without walls, so to speak. No boundaries except one. We set the boundary that we would not move back to California. It's just too darned expensive to live there, especially being retired. And so we've been holding now for quite some time this intention of living close to our children. And so finally, after a long period of time, really like the last 3, 4, 5 years, our son all of a sudden comes up with this job. His company he works for is moving him to Orlando. And so guess where we're moving? Not New Hampshire. So we'll be going over that way sometime, maybe before Christmas if we're fortunate and can work things out. I think Debbie's intention is next week. But anyway, so we held this intention, and now I'm having trouble remembering. Why did I go off on this trail? That's why I don't do this, Scott. But when we set an intention that's in tune with the universe, then I got to believe that that's God's will. So my son moving here, and it's God's will as it is my will to be in close proximity to my grandchildren, and Debbie feels the same way. We just want to be around them and watch them and be with them and have them grow up in our presence. 5 and 12-year-old. 12-year-old's almost out, right? What is it? 13, 14, forget it, they're gone. Almost. But we have a great relationship with them. And so I just believe strongly that God's will is for absolute good in life, in all ways. I think we sometimes have to open ourselves, though, to this desire, this urge that we feel within us, because often we will have a desire or urge to do something, but we hold back. We hold back because of fear, the fear of the unknown, the fear of what might be. You know, it was like when I was in grammar school. I was in the 3rd grade, and I used to, September, this is September, 1st of September, ironically, but towards the end of August, I'd get real excited because I was going to get to go to school, and I'd be in the 4th grade next year. And then it would dawn on me that I'm going from the 3rd grade to those big guys who are in the 4th grade, and then I get a little scared of that. I'd have some fear of it. And then when I went from the 7th grade to the 8th grade, that means where I grew up, 7th grade was still grammar school or elementary, and then the 8th grade was actually in our high school. And boy, talk about a jump. Talk about being scared of going to the big guy school. I mean, there's some big guys in the 12th grade, and here I'm an 8th grader. You get the sense of stepping again into a new experience, into the unknown, and what will happen. Every time we do, we acclimate, don't we? We learn. We go to school, and I'm talking about the school of life. We go to school, and then we find that it's not what we thought it was. It's not a dreadful place. It's an exciting thing to do, and it's exciting to be there and grow into that new awareness of who we are. And that's the way life is, because we never quit going to school. We always are going to school. I'm always reading something that is teaching me. I'm always meeting someone who teaches me along the way. And so I'm in school all the time. And I'm growing all the time. And the experiences that I have, and learning to express during all of this the highest and the best of who I am. Doing the best I can every moment in time to do it. And we have to do it in the moment. You can't do it in the past. You can't do it in the future. We know this intellectually. But so often we step through the gate and we carry with us the old beliefs, the old thoughts, and the old fears with us, when we really, it would be helpful if we just left those in the past. There's a minister in Lansing, Michigan. Her name is Sharon Ketchum. She's a minister up there, or a unity minister. And here's what I love this saying, and you might want to write it down and remember it, take it home with you. She says that the past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. I like that a lot. That my past is a different country. Back there, whoever that was, he did things a lot different than I do them today. And for that, I'm grateful. There is a universal urge for good. Now, I can't explain it any more than I can explain life itself. Here's what I know about it. It is a knowing. It is from deep inside me, a knowing that comes up. It's a desire, an urge that pushes me forward. But only if I cooperate with it. It's there. But if I don't cooperate with it, listen to it, pray about it, meditate, do all those things that we know in unity are good for us, then it will be squashed. It will never come to fruition. It will not be the highest and best of myself in that moment. That's not to say there won't be another moment. It's just that in that moment, I'm not attuned to it. I'm not listening to it. I'm not acting on it. And that's important for us to do. When we intellectually understand something and we take it into prayer and we begin to get in tune with it, then our attunement of action comes in meditation and moves us to take action. So the mere turning of the page doesn't mean that well, the turning of the page from August to September, that doesn't make us a new person or a new student. But the turning is this inner turning that we must do, a turning from doubts and fears and failures of the past, a deliberate turning of our face away from the shadows, away from the darkness to the light. We can't face two directions at the same time. Neither do we want to. We want to stay in one direction, focused, looking ahead to the highest and the best of who we are. And how do we express that? That is the universal urge for good. And it's universal. It's through every culture. It's even through nature. Nature is always wanting to evolve into the highest and best that it can be. After all, you and I are here. We see it as a new beginning, and we metaphorically then place our hand in the hand of God, certain of guidance, and certain of wonderful things ahead for us in the future. Whatever your personal goals may be, the most important goal you can make is to be the very best you can be in this moment. In that moment that is presenting itself to you, whenever that may be. You can only live in the now, as I said. You can't live in the past or the future. The past is the past. They do things differently back there. And there's no guarantee that you will reach every goal. But you can let God's love be the motivation for all that you do. And with God's love moving you forward, there's always something of excellence to achieve for you in this life. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you this morning. I appreciate it. And thank you for being here to listen. May God bless you richly and deeply.